Have you ever wondered why your language class felt like a super strict boot camp, but your friend's class was all about, just chatting and having fun? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to unlock the teacher's secret playbook and figure out why language classes can be so incredibly different. Right? So think about it. Was your classroom filled with endless grammar drills and memorizing vocabulary lists? Or was it all about role-playing, trying to order a coffee and just communicating, even if you made a ton of mistakes? Believe me, none of this is random. There's a deep reason behind every single choice your teacher made, and we're about to get into it. Okay, so here's the deal. Behind every single activity, whether it's a fill-in-the-blank worksheet or a big group project, there's this hidden playbook. It's a guiding philosophy, a set of beliefs about what language is and how our brains are actually wired to learn it. At the very, very top of this playbook is something called the approach. This is the big why. It's the core theory a teacher has. Do they believe language is a set of concrete rules you have to memorize? Or is it more of a living, breathing tool for connecting with other people? The answer to that question changes literally everything that happens in the classroom. And this is a perfect way to see how those big ideas actually trickle down into what you do in class. Think of it like a funnel. At the top, you have the approach, the why. That big idea then informs the method, the what, which is the overall plan. From there, you get the procedure, the how, the step-by-step sequence of a lesson. And all of that leads right down to the technique, the specific thing you do, like that grammar drill or that role play. So where do these big approaches even come from? Well, for the past century or so, they've really been shaped by three major schools of thought. You can think of these as the giant ideas that have been battling it out for control of the classroom. And wow, this chart just lays out the battle line so clearly. You've got behaviorism, where learning is all about building habits, stimulus, response, repeat. Then you have cognitivism, which says, no, it's an internal mental game. And finally, constructivism argues that learning is a social thing we do together. Each one of these views creates a completely different classroom experience. So, first up, behaviorism. If you're thinking of Pavlov's dogs, you're on the right track. The core idea is that language is just a set of habits. The teacher gives you a prompt, you give the right answer, you get a good job, and that habit gets stronger. The whole point is repetition, 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 and avoiding mistakes at all costs, because an error is just practicing a bad habit. But then, this guy Noam Chomsky comes along and completely flips the table. This is cognitivism. He argued that we're not just parrots repeating things. He said humans are born with a kind of language acquisition device hardwired into our brains. Suddenly, the focus wasn't on external behavior anymore. It was about the creative process happening inside our heads as we figure out the rules of the language on our own. And that brings us to our third school, constructivism. This idea says, hey, we don't learn in a vacuum. We build our knowledge together through social interaction. The absolute key concept here is Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, or ZPD. Basically, it's that magic spot between what you can do all by yourself and what you can do with a little help. Learning happens right there, in that collaborative space. You can actually see how these big ideas played out over time. Way back in the late 1800s, it was all about the grammar translation method. Then people got sick of that, which led to a reaction, the direct method, where you only spoke the target language. And finally, behaviorism gave us the audiolingual method, with all its listen and repeat drills. See the pattern? Each new method was basically a response to the old one. And just look at the contrast between two of these older methods. With grammar translation, the whole point was to read classic literature, so you focused on written accuracy. But with the audiolingual method, the goal was to speak perfectly, so you focused on forming habits. It's like they had completely opposite goals for what a language learner should be. Okay, so this brings us to the modern classroom, which is pretty much dominated by an approach called communicative language teaching, or CLT. This flows right out of constructivism, and the massive shift here is the focus on what language is for. The goal isn't just to know the rules, the goal is to be able to actually do things with the language, to communicate. So how do you actually do that? Well, one of the most popular methods today is task-based learning. The whole lesson is built around a real-world task, like planning a vacation or figuring out a train schedule. You learn the language you need as you go because you're trying to complete the task. The main goal is success, not perfect grammar right out of the gate. Here's another really powerful idea that's big today, the lexical approach. The core idea is that language isn't just a bunch of single words and grammar rules, it's made of chunks. Phrases like see you later, or by the way, or oh my god. Fluency comes from having a huge mental library of these ready-to-go chunks, so you're not building every sentence from scratch. And then you have this really fascinating counter movement to all the textbooks and technology, teaching unplugged. The philosophy here is simple. The most valuable resource in the room is the people. So learning is driven by the real, live conversations that pop up. The teacher's job is just to listen in and help shape the language that naturally emerges from the students. Okay, so after all of that, the drills, the tasks, the chunks, the conversations, you have to be asking the million-dollar question, right? What is the one best way to teach or to learn a language? Well, the truth is, there's no silver bullet. It's just really, really hard to say that any single method is the one true answer. The learners themselves, the reason they're learning, the language they're learning, it all matters way too much. And that leads to the most important point of all. Today, the most effective teachers don't pledge allegiance to just one method. They're more like chefs. They create a principled mix, taking the best ingredients from communicative teaching, from task-based learning, and from the lexical approach to cook up a lesson that's perfectly suited to their students. So now that we've given you the playbook, the final question really turns back to you. What kind of learner are you? Do you learn best by doing tasks, by noticing patterns and chunks, or by just talking it out? Because understanding the why behind all these methods doesn't just explain your old classes. It gives you the power to take control of how you learn from now on. Thanks for tuning in.